does it really mean to be healed? Like, that's something that's eluded me for 50 years. What are people missing from their life when they're not healed? And what does that mean to be healed?
There's so much to this question.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is that you could be on a healing journey and have some certain condition and do a lot of healing within it.
Yes.
And still pass away, but with like peace and source. We're little like sunbeams of source, right? And our souls choose to come into this lifetime with a set of conditions that are going to create the perfect conditions for their soul to evolve, for our souls to evolve, and wherever we are along the journey. This is my belief. So healing to me is a remembering of who we truly are. We're just these spiritual beings having these human experiences that aren't always comfortable, and give us the full spectrum of pleasure and pain. And there's all versions of healing within that, but comes from the same root word of wholeness.
It makes sense to me in multiple ways. And Kelly, I'm so excited to have you on this podcast. Thank you so much for coming and joining me today.
Oh my gosh, it's absolutely my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I remember when I first met you in Hawaii, just randomly, we ran into each other at the Four Seasons there.
Yeah, what a treat that was. I got to experience all the goodness with my girlfriend.
At our Next Health over there. Yeah. And then when I met you, we started talking about health and wellness. And I found out at that point that you had done this incredible documentary that I watched, or movie that I watched called Heal. And I've been waiting since then to have this conversation with you.
I know. I can't even, it was like a year and a half ago. When was that? It was
like a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Well,
just a chance meeting. Like we talked about manifestation earlier. Like that was a manifestation.
Absolutely. We are very aligned.
I love it. Well, I think I shared with you earlier when we were talking that this aspect of healing from an emotional, spiritual level, and how that ties into physical health is something that's missing in the speak and the conversation about health in general, for the most part. And it's definitely not something that I was ever empowered with in Western medical training. It wasn't even talked about. And I really love how you brought attention to that with your documentary. And I've always wondered, what was the impetus for you to make that documentary?
Yeah, I wish it was obviously I get this asked in every interview. And it's like a lifetime of really steps. You would think that I would have gotten a diagnosis or I lost someone to something, tragic, and none of that occurred. It was really, I've always been a seeker. I've always wanted to understand, why are we here? What is this life about? Understand human potential. I'm just fascinated with elite athletes and just people at the top of their game. And so I'm always trying to crack the code of what does that mean? And even in religion, I was raised Catholic and I was going to be confirmed, but I had Jewish friends that were throwing really cool bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs. And I had Hindu friends and Buddhists and, of all different spiritual disciplines and religions. And I was like, well, before I take commitment seriously. So I'm before I confirm Catholic, I kind of want to learn about all these other religions. And I had this knowing and a sense that universally they were all kind of aligned. Yeah. They were just dressed in different cultural clothing.
Right.
And so that fascinated me. And then, with Catholicism, I loved the historical stories of Jesus.
Sure.
And just, all the biblical stories and miracles and parables and everything. And then, but I didn't love the guilt and the shame of the punishing God that was always watching me. When you're going through adolescence, that's a very uncomfortable idea. So anyways, all of that to say, I didn't get confirmed. Then I went through a period of where I was pretty cause and effect karma. There is no God. I guess I was agnostic, kind of very much in the earth of my teenage years where you feel like you know everything and you're in control of everything. And then you make very bad decisions and you hope that's not true. And then I went to Berkeley, my first 2 years of college, and I was very unsettled. Nowadays, this was 1997, 98. So nowadays, it would be easily labeled as anxiety and depression. But back then, I just felt agitated, a little angry, not connected to, like I wasn't as happy as I had been in my hometown in sunny Southern California with my friends that I had been friends with since, first grade. So I was just feeling that unsettled. And then I went to travel. I transferred to UCLA to get back to the sunshine and my friends, to feel more connected and happy again. And I traveled with my brother, and this person I met in Australia on our travels gave me the book Return to Love by Marianne Williamson.
Yes.
And I'm reading it on the long plane ride home from Sydney. And I was just like, this is what I've been missing, like my spiritual true north. Like, she broke it down to just, if you come from love, you create heaven on earth. If you come from fear, you create hell on earth. And it just like really resonated. So that was kind of like the continuation or reawakening of my spiritual journey. And then, just to make it short, like I was an actor. I'd grown up acting. I stopped when I went to Berkeley. Then I felt like, well, maybe that's why I don't feel connected, because I'm not doing my passion, Ultimately, as much as I love acting, I really was seeking outside validation to try to feel love and connection through adoration and Oscars and trophies and achievement, like many people do in their own version. And so in that process of my 20s and like not achieving the success in acting, it's a brutal business, by the way. And I'm like I'm like a dime a dozen in LA. Like there's blonde hair, blue eyed girls in every audition room by the, thousands. Yeah. So I started like listening to self-help and personal development to see what was blocking me from the success that I wanted. And that led to, going to yoga classes, and then my yoga teacher taught me meditation, and then I started meditating, transcendental meditation in 2007. So that was like 10 years later. And then that led to like going to Agape, which is this spiritual center here in LA with Michael Beckwith. And I had seen Michael Beckwith in The Secret, and I learned about law of attraction. And so basically I'm just flooding on my way to auditions and running marathons and training runs. I'm just flooding my consciousness with personal development to feel empowered in this very disempowered time in my life and industry that I was in. And one thing led to another, and I started getting really empowered and applying law of attraction and gratitude work from seeing The Secret. And then I'd be meandering through the Agape bookstore, and I pick up The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we're not victims of our genes. Yeah. Like our lifestyle choices, our perception of our environment, past trauma, all of these things toggle on and off our genes. And so ultimately I just became more empowered by all of these teachers, inspired, and so much more so than I was acting. Yet I had still been around sets and acting and film as a medium for storytelling my whole life. So I knew how powerful it was. So I kind of took those old skills and started paying attention. Like it would light me up to talk about quantum physics and potential and possibility and spontaneous healing stories. And so, I put all my teachers in a film to empower others like I had been empowered.
That's amazing.
It's a long, circuitous story, but...
No, but it really speaks to, using your career to further other people's knowledge, which speaks a lot about you, that you're really an educator. You want other people to learn, and you had no reason to teach other people. You were benefiting from all of these thoughts, but just the fact that you want to spread the knowledge is just so fantastic that you went down that path. And I think when I watched that documentary, I thought to myself, like, what does it really mean to be healed? Like that's something that's eluded me for 50 years. It's until just recently. And I would love to hear from you, kind of your perception on that. Like, what are people missing from their life when they're not healed? And what does that mean to be healed?
Wow. This is a very profound question to begin with. It's a beautiful question. And, and we talk about this, like we one of the questions in the documentary is like, okay, we understand that past trauma can lead to future disease. and all of these things that we need to look at. But what about the children that come into this life and, before they're able to accumulate all this past trauma, like, why do they come in? I just attended the memorial service 2 days ago for my friend's 3-year-old daughter who was born with SGS, which I don't even know what that stands for. All I know that it is a rare disease that like 75 children a year are born with it out of, 8 billion humans. Right. So you have the greater chance of winning the lottery. Right. And their life expectancy is I think, about 3 years old. And she died a day before her 3rd birthday. And so sad. This is one of my good friends. They've got 3 other healthy children, thank God. But they had to go through this journey. And like, it just shifts everything in perspective. And they're just based on the knowledge and the belief around that condition, there was just no expectation or belief that she could be healed. Mm-hmm. And so, I think if we pull out greater, like God, life, destiny, soul, whatever language you want to put into it, there's a plan. And I mean, I personally believe in that it's all about soul's evolution, and we come from source and we return from source, just based on like people's near-death experiences that all kind of line up. Right. And this love that people describe in these mystical moments that passes all, human understanding, this love and this peace feeling. So all of that to say, I think healing in the earthly sense is like these human bodies are designed to heal in every moment. We are self-healing mechanisms. And just like nature, all of nature is like self-regenerative and healing. And modern society is getting in the way of that, which, but there's a lifespan. Like, there's so much to this question. Yeah. All I'm saying is that you could be on a healing journey and have some certain condition and do a lot of healing within it. Yes. And still pass away, but with like peace. And then there's the kids that come in with this kind of like destiny that like air quotes healing as we know it was not ever part of the plan or possibility, but so much healing occurred around it, and so much wholeness and perfection in that circumstance or dynamic existed. So to me, it's like a spiritual question, and I always say healing is like a remembering of who we really are. So we're these spiritual beings, whole, perfect, divine, no flaws, like just this high frequency energy that's comes from source and returns from source. We're little like sunbeams of source, right? And our souls choose to come into this lifetime with a set of conditions that are going to create the perfect conditions for their soul to evolve, for our souls to evolve in wherever we are along the journey. This is my belief. So healing to me is a remembering of who we truly are. We're just these spiritual beings having these human experiences that aren't always comfortable. Right. And give us the full spectrum of pleasure and pain. And there's all versions of healing within that. But healing comes from the same root word of wholeness. And, ultimately our higher selves, that higher frequency that we can tap into at any time. And we have, like, through these mystical experiences that we've all touched on, whether we're aware of it or not. That's that wholeness that is there. We're already healed in that other dimension, if that makes sense.
It makes it makes sense to me in multiple ways. And I'm just writing down all these questions I have for you because you touched on so many things. When I think about healing and people's healing journeys, I feel like a lot of times people don't either recognize they need some aspect of healing or they actually physically block the healing. And I think about my own life and some of the traumatic events that happened to me when I grew up. I just kind of suppressed them. So why do you think there's this tendency for people to do that?
I think it's, twofold. I think when we're younger, we don't have the tools to process a lot of heavy stuff. So we do just it's our survival mechanism of the species to just suppress and put it somewhere to deal with later.
Right.
Because it just seems so overwhelming that we don't know how to process it. And then also just we've been conditioned to believe that we don't have the power. And we've been so disconnected from our higher selves, our intuition, all of these things. Like just our biology is so intricate and intelligent. And our biology is connected to this field of energy that's invisible, which is connected to nature, which is, like you said, we talked about entanglement in the other conversation. Everything is connected, and our biology has connections to that. So if we, what I'm saying is, like, if we're cut off from our intuition, if we just think we're kind of this mind and this body function and this heart, like, we just don't have that awareness that, like, so much more is possible. And this is just scratching the surface. Like, we have access to, like, so much more intelligence and energy and potential than these seemingly limited little bodies. Like, we've all experienced walking to a room and feeling like the energy shift, or someone tells us a story and we get full body chills, you know, like this is all feedback of like a different information, a different frequency that's coming through. So, you know, and growing up watching Little House on the Prairie.
I love that show.
Yes.
I watched every episode.
Totally. And just anything from the old days where the doctor in the white coat came with the leather black bag with, you know, the tinctures and the pills and the measuring, you know, the listening to the heart and everything. It's like something's wrong with us and we don't know the answer, so we call the doctor to solve it for us. And that's like our basic belief system. And so, yes, we do need, but also I feel like we're really adaptable and resilient. So we just like, and moms especially, like, we ignore our own needs and we just kind of normalize to like a level of like painful, exhausted, tense, you know, normal.
Right.
And it's not normal. So it's like it's a combination of things. It's like we don't believe that we have the power. We don't believe we have the potential.
Right.
And we're not really aware, like you were surgery, eating to survive, like because your gifts were so overwhelming in one area and you're like very high functioning, you just kind of like barrel through without really listening to your body, you know? And that pace of the world, we live in this like unsustainable pace of the world. So we just like don't deal with things until we're knocked over the head with a crazy diagnosis. And and I feel like that's the way the universe works. Like it taps on your shoulder, a little whisper, a little pain, a little indigestion, a little something, rest, you know, and then it's just going to get louder and louder until it goes, look, you are completely out of balance and misaligned with your, you know, what you came here to do.
Yeah. No, you're so right about that. And I think that last point you made about we just don't even give ourselves the time to heal. Like things are so frenetic and moving at such a fast pace. We don't stop to think that we need a moment to heal, you know? And so and then you just keep pushing it off. And like you said, our minds and our bodies are so resilient. I think our minds are sometimes even much more resilient than our bodies. So we build up the damage for so long until, you know, it hits you over the head, like you said, right?
It is. It's this. I think it's this modern pace of life coupled with social media and 24-hour news and technology at our fingertips for the achievers and the people that can just like handle a lot. They barrel through until they break down. And then there's another population, because we're all made up so differently with different constitutions and different capabilities. And then there's just like a whole nother group of people that are just so overwhelmed they can't barrel through, so they get listless, depressed, and shut down, and they stuff down those feelings of isolation with food, and then they get more isolated, and they're, you know, so there's different, it all looks different, but it's the same thing. We are overwhelmed and inundated with too much right now. And we have completely disconnected from nature and the cycles of nature that keep us vital.
Right. No, absolutely. Like if you think about our caveman ancestors, they really only had a couple things to do every day, right? Like
Yeah.
they had to go find some food and make sure they didn't get attacked by an animal. And
Yeah.
there really wasn't much else to do.
Stay warm somehow,
Right. Stay
yeah.
warm. Right. Exactly. And the amount of stuff that we've added to our life, especially in this era of technology, is just mind blowing. And you don't have the space or the time to really focus on yourself. And I'm a big advocate of having moments in the day where you do some level of reflection and self-care, and then definitely on a weekly basis. And so I think adding that into people's lives could be a really helpful tool, I think, to at least start making the room for awareness, I think.
Totally. And it's a practice, like with anything. These rituals are practices in order to keep that space and that self-care as a regular, kind of expander of life. So you're not just like sucked down the river of
Absolutely.
algorithm.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. It's like awareness is not just something that you do like once a year, I think, or once on like when you go on vacation. It's a daily practice that needs to be part of your life, because it's really the building up of those moments of awareness that give you a longer time of awareness. And I'm a big fan of transcendental meditation as well. Out of all the methods of meditation, that's the only one that kind of worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's one right way to meditate, but you have to find what works for you. And I think that gave me that space for awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's all to make life easier. Again, it's just back to that word of ease and flow, and it's these disruptions in your day, these grounding practices. You have your morning routine. I try to have my morning routine that's disrupted all the time by my 5-year-old. But when you have these daily practices and these space holders to get you back in connection with yourself, or bring you a little joy, or bring you a little peace, like that keeps us in that harmony of nature. And I love the saying, I think it's like a Zen saying, but it's like, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Like it's just, you have to have these, life is still going to be life, challenging.
Yes.
You don't go to the cave to meditate to like escape. Like you're still going to have to live life, but you just bring a little bit more peace and enjoyment to the inevitable challenges and, growth patterns of life.
I totally agree with you. That brings up a really good point, is that I think many of my patients that I talk to, they ask me about meditation. And my answer is, they ask, why should I meditate, right? And so I think adding this aspect of developing some room for awareness is another really great reason to add meditation to your life, right?
Yeah.
Beyond just the brain benefits and the health benefits of it.
Totally. And I think the most common thing, and you probably hear it a ton, is like, oh, I can't meditate. My mind's too busy. It's like, and then the other Zen parable, it's like, if you don't have time to meditate, or if you can meditate for 20 minutes a day. If you don't have time to meditate for an hour. Like you actually become more productive, and because your brain becomes more just efficient physiologically and like biochemically when you meditate, when you have a regular practice, and it becomes more resilient. So over time you are more productive. But for the people that have like the monkey mind, you can replace it with anything that brings that meditative state to you. It could be gardening, it could be walking on the beach, it could be playing backgammon, it could, just like anything that gets your mind out of that monkey thought cycle loop.
Yeah, where there's constantly a flood of thoughts in your brain at all times, not letting you even recognize what's going on around you.
Yeah.
I think that's where meditation adds to my life, is the awareness of my surroundings sometimes as well.
Yeah. Presence. And if you're in that, if you're letting I always look like the mind is a great tool for strategy, but it's not going to bring you happiness. Like you got to drop into the heart for happiness. I think, I don't know who said that, but many people have said that. So the mind is such a powerful tool, but because of, just survival of our species, it's conditioned or programmed or designed to seek out in our environment threats and dangers, or, also evidence to support, your beliefs about yourself. So we filter out a lot of the stuff. So presence is like a huge part of healing and ease, right? To be present. And so meditation is just one of the tools to like grab the reins of, that stallion of the mind and just start to calm. And the more you practice that, the more efficient the brain and mind become, the more space it opens up, the lens cleanses, and you see it, more potentials, more possibilities open up in your environment because you've created more space and presence.
I love that. So can I ask you, for the people that are listening, if they have repressed for many years, sometimes decades or their entire life, traumas, right? So that's one aspect of healing, is healing from past traumas. What are some of your recommendations as far as what are some ways to think through that? And I mean, one of the questions I get all the time is, I don't want to bring up my past traumas because I know there's going to be a lot of work I have to do, a lot of emotional distress that comes from that. And then my answer to that is, well, how you need to heal from these at some point in life. And I would love to hear, if I came to you with that kind of talk track, like, I don't want to heal, how would you approach that?
Look, I was in a relationship with someone who truly believed they didn't have any past trauma, yet super high achieving, successful person. And every single person in their life is like, bro, you got trauma. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it's clear to everybody else. So, very few of us go through life without any sort of suppressed trauma in our system. There's so many, it's like, there's so many modalities to release the trauma. And I love to go on the exploration of like, try everything and share, and different things will resonate with different people. But it's just good to know that, everything is energy. So if you experienced trauma as a child or even later in life, traumatic things are overwhelming, and they're sometimes shocking and sometimes horrific. And so, that's why you go into shock, is it's your body's way of saving you from like an unimaginable pain, whether psychological or physical. And so if you're not able to process it and digest that energy and the emotion and like that crazy intensity of the experience, it's going to get trapped. That, even if it's just like an energetic signature in your body. And, you could weave Chinese medicine into it, and there's different emotions that are processed by different organ systems. And so it's really fascinating. And I'm not an expert. I interview all the experts, so I'm not an expert in any of it. But I do know that you can have these access points through like traditional Chinese medicine. And that's why acupuncture can really release those energetic blockages in your meridians. And it's really fascinating because some of the most effective technologies are ancient, most of them, or based on ancient things that have been working effectively for thousands of years. There's also, I'm just going to rattle off some so people can see what resonates, and then they can explore. So there's somatic healing, like myofascial release, and you go to practitioners and they know where trauma can be trapped in your body based on these tension patterns. So you can release it literally from like the fascia and the muscles. There's also EMDR, which kind of reprograms. It's eye motion desensitization and something, but it's EMDR, and I always forget the thing.
Eye motion, like your eyes.
So but they can use paddles now.
Oh, okay.
So it's EMDR, and you do it with a therapist, and I hope the E is an I. I think it is, but it's a way to reprogram your subconscious mind and the things that are trapped there, and they have this just system of going back through, and you kind of relive the trauma, and then you reframe. Maybe it's reframing is the R.
Okay.
And then you reframe it, and it desensitizes you each time you visit it.
Right.
And while you're getting some stimulation, whether it's through the eye movement and you're watching a screen and your eyes are thing, or it's through paddles of like, and that's very effective, and that changes people's lives. There's EFT, emotional freedom technique, which is tapping.
Yes.
And it's a series of tapping on meridians. And they walk you through releasing emotion. It's wild. Like sometimes I'll tap to move through anger. Yeah. And then under the anger is like profound hurt and grief. And so it's just, it's wild to see. I mean, there's so many modalities.
Right.
You know, anyways, I could go on forever, but it does get trapped in your body.
It does.
And it can lead to I think it should be part of any healing journey. So even if your condition is very physical, there's usually always an emotional or energetic
absolutely
signature underneath, that leads to that, or at least paves the way to the weakness in the system where disease can crop up.
And that's resonates with me completely, and I'm becoming more and more a believer of that, because I can tell, I've watched hundreds of patients go through healing journeys now with this practice, and if they don't have some level of dealing with trauma and dealing with their emotional well-being at the same time as their physical healing journey, the physical healing journey is so much slower, and a lot of the things that I know should work don't work. And there's this huge component of emotional wellness and trauma and healing from traumas and just spiritual awareness that has a profound effect on your physiology. And it's even outside of your like your brain and what's in your brain and the mentality. It has to do with the energy around you, like you were saying. And I see it every single day with almost everybody.
And it gets tricky because it could be ancestral. It could not even be your signature that, but like you said, entanglement, and that's a little bit more like out there. And
it's hard for people to get their head wrapped around.
It's hard to wrap your head around. But I love, in the film, I interview Kelly Turner, who was studying, she was getting her PhD and she was studying cancer specifically. And she started like seeing all these spontaneous healing stories, or people that were basically terminal. The Western medicine said there's nothing else we can do, and these people were sent home to die, and they didn't die. And she's like, and they were just chalked up as anomalies, medical anomalies. And she's like, we should be studying. There's not just 2 of these cases. There's thousands of these cases. She's like, we should be studying what they're doing. Right. This is fascinating to me. So, stage 4, terminal, get your affairs in order. There's nothing else we can do. Go home and get comfortable. Was all of their last contact with the doctor. And then they all, 10, 20, 30 years later, they're still alive.
Incredible.
So that was her research project. And she, in the film, when it came out, there was 9 things. She later realized that some form of movement was a part of it. So she found 10 things that all these people from all different types of cancers and all different stages did to heal. And so the 10 things, and I don't know if I can get through all 10 of them off the top of my head, but it's radically changing your diet, using herbs and supplements, movement. So those 3 were physical. The other 7, like releasing suppressed negative emotions, increasing positive emotions, getting social support, finding strong reasons for living. What was the other? So again, I can't remember. But my point is, out of those 10, 3 of them were physical. The rest were mental, emotional, and spiritual. Yeah. So that applies specifically to cancer. Cancer being a very complex chronic illness, I think that kind of template applies to all chronic illnesses. And it's about that ratio of like 30% of it is physical and the rest is mental, emotional, and spiritual. So you have to bring in that factor, because it's invisible, so it's hard to quantify, but it's so powerful. And
I mean, if every doctor had this knowledge and you made that part of everyone's physical well-being journey, it would be so much more effective. You'd have to use a lot less medication. I mean, you see it like already with this thing called the placebo effect, right? People get healed with like a sugar pill. There's not even any kind of medication. And I think a lot of people in the medical community refer to that as a mind-body connection. But I think it's beyond that. It's all 7 of those things, right?
And I think people forget too, like we talk about the placebo effect and the nocebo effect, which we'll get into it in a second.
Please.
But in a placebo effect, a lot of people think, oh, the placebo effect, it's just in their mind. They're believing that they feel better, so they do. But actually, our brain is our best, like the world's best pharmacy. And just like you said, even in our gut, like the microbiome, like people are taking pills now or doing the GLP-1 to mimic something that our body creates, like even like vitamin D, all these vitamins and supplements and medications that we take. It's like our body usually creates it, but it's not anymore. So we need to boost it. Yes. And so in the placebo effect, like when you're taking the antidepressant study, there's actual in the placebo group, when they're taking an innate substance, a sugar pill that shouldn't have any effect on the body, because they are assigning meaning to the pill, that it's potentially a chemical that's going to make them feel better. And then they're taking it and they have meaning like, oh, I've taken Advil in the past and that's helped my headache. So pills actually lead to results. And then they're expecting to feel better, because that's the thing. Like the belief and the expectation and the meaning causes their brain to actually shift chemistry so they actually feel better. It's not just like in their mind, their brain is actually shifting chemistry.
Right.
So, for me, I'm like, and it's not just, it could be 50, 60, 70% of the time. So it's almost more effective than the actual pill.
Sometimes it is.
Sometimes it is, So all of that to say, we're so advanced in medicine, and pharmaceutical companies, God bless them, they save lives in a lot of ways, but they're also for-profit businesses. When what we should be doing, if we actually cared about health, is tap into the placebo and the power of the placebo and start people on medication, and then weave them into the placebo and start to wean them off medication, but still take a pill that does no harm. You know what I mean? There's we have so much more capability than what we're tapping into, because a lot of it is thrown off track by profit, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk about the nocebo effect a little bit too. That's really interesting.
Yeah. So the nocebo effect, placebo effect from, Latin or whatever, placebo is positive, nocebo is negative. And so, oftentimes we forget the power of language. So there's this doctor that, this guy, Bernie Siegel, who was very effective with children. And he saw the miracle of instilling hope in children. And a lot of, for that placebo effect, for belief, and a lot of the times the parents would have so much fear that would block, because the parents were, and so, and doctors, rightly so, they don't want to give false hope.
Right.
Not just for liability, but for their own psyche. Like they're so kind of, what is that called? Jaded, or because they've gone through so much heartache, losing patients and everything else. So they want to reserve hope, they want to be realistic. Unfortunately, a lot of times doctors' language, what I was saying about Bernie Siegel, when he wrote words becomes swords.
Yes.
Language is very powerful. And so we say in the film, I think Deepak Chopra says it, but he's like, go get the diagnosis, find out. We have incredible medical technology. Find out through labs, through scans, what's going on in your system, what's wrong. Don't accept the prognosis. Don't buy in to one doctor's or a group of doctors' opinions of what is normal with this certain condition, because don't let anybody tell you what's possible for you. And what happens is, and this is the nocebo effect, people buy into a prognosis. So this is your condition. You have 3 options for this type of chemo. You have about 5 years where we can manage your disease, and then you're you know?
Yep.
And people, that's terrifying. So people are in a fear state. They're grasping onto that language, and it just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right.
And then the statistics continue to boost because everybody's falling prey to those prognoses. And, or the statistics perpetuate. So that's another thing is like taking control of your health is one of the radical remission things. It's not letting anybody tell you what's possible for you. So there's been people has defied statistics in every condition because they go, oh no, that's not going to be me. I'm going to be that 1% to 2%. And that 1% to 2% could be 90% if everybody had that attitude and went and didn't fall prey to that language. And so the nocebo effect is really buying into the belief that something negative is going to happen, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. I think doctors get, like you said, jaded because they do see a lot of patients go the wrong direction with their health, unfortunately. However, I do think that there's a massive component, even bigger than seeing patients go the wrong direction, is that doctors themselves get convinced that there's not a good prognosis because what they see are statistical numbers. And every study out there, statistics are based on averages, right? So when you talk about a 5-year survival rate on any type of cancer, let's say breast cancer, stage 4 breast cancer, you see the 5-year survival as a doctor, you assign that same statistic that is the average to every patient you see, and then you almost create that destiny for the patients.
Correct.
And so you end up getting all the patients to fall into the average just by what you're creating with how you're thinking about the statistics that you've been taught.
Yeah.
And it's very, it's sadly unfortunate because there are a lot of people like way outside that statistical range that have survived for a long, long time or even turned the cancer around. And so I think it's important for everyone to realize, as practitioners and doctors included, that the statistics can sometimes paint a very negative picture that you end up almost manifesting or making the patient go down that pathway. Yeah.
And like we said earlier, like the doctors are only, or maybe we could talk about it here just so, or I guess your audience knows, like the doctors are very limited in their education. So they're not given a lot of nutrition. Right. They're not taught about the power of language or energy. So for what they're able to treat their particular expertise and conditions in, those statistics apply, but they're not taking into consideration any sort of lifestyle or functional medicine or, stress management, release of trauma, all the emotional, mental, and spiritual side that is clearly a big factor. They're not taking that into account. So, of course, their statistics are going to be limited. So, I just think it would be so – I think it's common knowledge now that doctors are like, okay, well, stress plays a factor, but because of health insurance and other reasons, the model doesn't allow them to get into what the patient eats per se, or the stress or past trauma or state of their relationship and all of these factors that absolutely lead in. So they're they're looking at numbers, they're looking at labs, and they're looking at, tumors, but they're not factoring the potentials of all those 70% of the other things that they can change outside of the physical.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think once doctors get empowered with that knowledge, they have so many more options beyond just the pill. Then they expand into nutrition, sleep, exercise, movement, stress management. But beyond that, there's so many more options around emotional health and factoring relationships. Like you said, all the things you grow up with, getting through traumas, all of those things can also help the patient. But I think, that's just not good knowledge for doctors to have. That's for every individual to have because they can affect their own health with all of these tools, right?
Yes, totally. That's why, like you say, you have to become the CEO of your own health. You have to become your own advocate. Go to the doctors. They do have extensive education and access to knowledge that you may not have, but also like, our systems are so intelligent and we are connected to higher guidance and intuition and, tapping into your intuition is one of the 7.
Yes.
And that's your ultimate like GPS system for your bioindividuality that will never lead you astray. The trick is learning how to reconnect to it and decipher it and translate it. But we have that built into this brilliant system of our human body to guide us through life if we only learn how to listen.
Yeah, it's so true. Can we talk about intuition a little bit more? Because I've been asked about this a few times, and I don't have a good answer for this, but what is intuition? How does someone know when they're experiencing an intuitive moment? And how do they tap into it more?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's tough because my spiritual beliefs kind of pepper how I would answer this question. And I believe,
okay.
I believe we're
so.
spiritual beings
Right.
having a physical experience, and we always have, we're like antennas that the signal, if we can create the right space and tap into the right frequency, we always have access to that higher guidance, So the more presence we can practice, the more quieting of the noise of the mind and the like surface friction, and we can go deeper into like if we just let our brains go, if we're scrolling and we're in traffic and we're not like practicing mindfulness, our breath is shallower.
Sure.
You just naturally like hold your breath in tension. So if we have these daily practices where we're turning within, cutting off the external stimulation, deepening our breath, like respiration, inspiration, spirit, like our breath is literally life. By the way, that was the other main trauma releasing breathwork, I think, is like some holotropic breathwork.
It really is
some of those profound healing you can do just with your own instrument. It's
so true.
phenomenal. So all of that to say, intuition is much easier to tap into when you create that space and when you're practicing mindfulness. And it comes from different people. I mean, different people have different kind of gifts of like clairvoyance or clairaudience or I just have like knowings, I call them. Like they're just knowings. I don't hear a voice. But I just like, it's like a resonance. And you got to tune into whatever that is for you. I mean, you told me the story of on your health journey, you weren't feeling, you were like on all these medications, you weren't feeling good. And you had your first child, and that kind of like shifts your perspective. And then all of a sudden, you're on the day your child is born or shortly thereafter, you're reading an article about life expectancy for people with, one or two different autoimmune diseases. And like, to me, that's like for you to even be open to seeing that article at that time was intuitive guidance. That was guidance from spirit. It's like unexplainable how you got the right piece of information at the right time to change the course of your life. Like that's intuition too. Like there's an inner urging or compulsion to like ask something to the guy in front of you at the supermarket or say hello, or so I'm fascinated by it. There's no real like kind of hard line definition, but it's just that guidance, that nudge that gets you on the right track should you listen to it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, the way I like to talk about it with people is that I give them examples. And one example is we have this nerve that connects our brain to our gut. It's called the vagus nerve. And it's a way for our gut to communicate with our brain and our brain to communicate with our gut. But also we have 100 billion microorganisms living in our gut that's also using the vagus nerve to communicate through chemical signals to our brain. And all of this is happening without us physically thinking it's happening. This is all occurring. There's also sound frequencies that our brain hears that we're not going to pick up when, in our conscious existence, but they're there and we all dream. And so all these things are happening that we may or may not be aware of. When you quiet your mind through practices like meditation or breath work, you become more aware. But there's probably billions, if not trillions, of other data points that we're not aware of. And combine all those into this body of evidence that we call intuition.
Yes.
right?
Totally. Totally.
Yeah. And
Yeah, we're like not even just human cells. We are a community of
yes,
bacteria and human cells and all these
yeah,
other things that it's fascinating to me.
it is. And I think just leaning into the acceptance of that will give you so much more power as well. I think that's so important. And even, let's talk about the subconscious mind too. I think that's what we're kind of talking about a little bit here. Where do you see the ability of our subconscious mind affecting our physical health, and how can we use this to our advantage? What are some techniques we can use to use that to our advantage?
Yeah. Well, in like Bruce Lipton, who's a stem cell biologist and he kind of father of epigenetics, perhaps. He's just one of the greatest humans I've ever met too. He's so brilliant, but he's just this jovial spirit. And he talks about, our brains are kind of like computers, right? So and that computer is spread throughout our entire body, just connected through, the vagus nerve and other things. So from the ages of 0 in utero to 7 years old, the way that our brain is developing, we're just downloading software from other people. We're downloading programs, beliefs, frequencies, everything that's like regulating our nervous system and coloring the lens through which we perceive life. So our beliefs that are, and our subconscious kind of runs the show 95% of the time. So we're kind of reacting
95% of the
95%.
time.
And then our conscious mind has about 5% of the power to operate in life. So the problem lies in the fact that 75% is his theory and others of these programs that we download from other people, our environment, our caregivers, our teachers. Those programs are negative and disempowering. So we're all kind of like starting at a real because
disadvantage there.
Yeah, and just generationally, like people, our parents are boomers, and they were products of, World War parents and had all those traumas, and so it's just getting passed down. So the beautiful thing about the world that we operate in this healing world is like, okay, how do our brains can change. How do we download new software? How do we change the subconscious programmings to be empowering and, life-giving? And so that's like what I think, 95% of healing is like addressing those programs and seeing where we're being held back and how to, kind of break through those constraints and create new healthy mind programs.
Yeah.
Like you do, like your mindset. You're reading about your mindset every morning.
Yeah.
And how to shift these things and how to realize which traumas we're still looping in our brain and reliving. Like it happened to us when we were 4, yet we're still stuck in that energy and pattern. It's like, okay, what happened to us happened. It's also created, like one of my favorite quotes these days is, I think, Andrea Dijkstra. I don't even know who that is, but it's a great quote. It's like, in order to love who you are, you can't hate the experiences that shaped you. So like all of these challenges, all of these traumas, all of these things we've gone through have given us, molded us into the people that we have become, and the gifts and the strengths and the, even just like the intelligence, because we were under these pressure situations that made us learn new skills.
Yeah. I totally believe there's a huge component in that for physical health. And one of the things that I've been doing lately for my a lot of my patients is when I'm trying to make big physical changes, turning around metabolic disease, for example, one of the first things I have them do as a prescription is get some sort of journal that they can, every morning they can do some gratitude work and some visualization. And so there's one called the 5-Minute Journal. I know if you've heard of that one. And Rangan Chatterjee, who's a friend of mine, a doctor in UK, he's also created a journal. So I'll have them buy one of these and just start doing it on a daily basis, like a prescription. I'm like, this is a prescription as part of your health plan. I can't tell you, like, I really feel that really helps. It works. I can't wait for me or someone to do a study on how much that accelerates people's health journey.
Yeah. It literally shifts the chemistry in your body.
It does.
Gratitude. That was one of the biggest empowering things in my life was when, and like you said, you're big into manifestation. When I started gratitude journaling in my practice, it shifts over time. And I just did like a 28-day gratitude challenge
cool.
with Rhonda Byrne. She's got this
nice.
book, The Magic. But normally, or when I first started gratitude journaling, it was from watching the movie The Secret, which, some people have their opinions of. But
I watched that movie like 5 times. I love that movie.
Okay, good. I mean, it really changed my life.
Yeah,
so, and I love Rhonda Byrne. Like I interviewed her at the beginning of last year, and it just completely changed the course of my year. She lives it, right? So I watched The Secret, and I started, giving thanks. I think Bob Proctor talked about it in the film, but it was, I'm so happy and grateful now that, and you write, you're grateful for things that you want as if you already have them. Yeah. Because the body doesn't know the difference between what's real and imagined. Sure. That's why you can imagine or remember your past trauma, and then all of a sudden you're in that panic state. You're flooding your body with cortisol. Yes. Mm-hmm. You're having a real-time reaction to something that happened decades ago. Right. Because it doesn't know the difference between what's real and imagined. So what we want to do is, with gratitude journaling and just getting into a state of gratitude every morning, like you said, it shifts the chemistry into thinking, oh my gosh, I have so much to be grateful for. And it starts to release this like optimal hormones and neurotransmitters that are life-giving and vital because you're in gratitude. You're not in stress. You can't be, they're mutually exclusive. You can't be stressing while you're in gratitude. So it's such a powerful practice that seems airy-fairy, but if you're just, what my little prescription for myself is, I write things that I'm actually grateful for, because that kind of gets me in that truth state, because there's so much to be grateful for. We all have things to be grateful for, no matter how dark the valley is in this current moment. Right. And then I start to fantasize, I start to visualize, and I start to give thanks for the things I want as if I already have them. And it just starts to crystallize. Not only do you flood your body with all that positive biochemistry, but you're sending out different information and frequency into the field, and life organizes. I just went to this Tony Robbins event, first time. I don't know why it's taken me so long. It was 6 days, and it was called.
That's right up your alley.
Yeah, I know. It's like so me. It's called Date with Destiny, and it was, and they're long days, and you blast the AC, it keeps you awake, but it's all a formula for reprogramming your nervous system, right. And so it works. But God, where was I going with this?
About creating your future with manifestation and.
Oh yeah. So shoot, where was I going with this? See, brain fog. I need that cognition test. But we can maybe cut out this pause. But what was I going with it? It was about gratitude. I don't know. Wow, that just.
Well, you were saying how you write down things that you visualize, like you're thankful for it, like it's already happened, and the world organizes itself around that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God, why would I bring up Tony Robbins? It was quite profound.
I've been to Date with Destiny 3 times.
You have?
I loved it.
I figured. I was like, you're such an achiever. Like, you've accomplished so much. I feel like
my first kind of brush with all of this manifestation and everything was a set of actual cassette tapes of Tony Robbins, his first set that he came out with. And I would listen to it every single day driving into medical school when I was like, 16 years old, and cassette. Yeah. And that changed everything for me. And then I watched The Secret, which was like I watched it like twice in a row. And then all the books around manifestation and the future. And it's this massive change in mindset. And I don't know if it's like creates just an air of positivity and gratitude that has all of the positive. I think at a very basic level, maybe that's what it does. But I think also at a, we could talk about this too, and I want to love to hear how you feel about this, is do you think that because you put yourself in that state as though it really is your future, that because there are multiple versions of the future that we're all traveling through at a quantum level, do you think we just kind of like shift ourselves in that direction? Do you think there's a piece of that in there?
Yes, I think so. Absolutely. I think there's like parallel. I just always look at life like, talk about back to the 80s and 90s, like a choose your own adventure book.
Right, exactly.
And
right.
this is, thank you. You just brought me back to why I even brought up Tony Robbins. He says, look, we can't control life, but we can influence it.
Yes.
So I always say, like, we are co-creators, just like those children that come into the world with this path. And, God forbid they, like my friend's daughter, that was like, it was a 3-year journey. She came in with that plan and that was her soul's contract or whatever. But we are co-creators with life. We have free will. And that's what makes life interesting. That's what makes this a game of life. So like our soul comes in here, our purpose is to remember why we came in here, but we're going to forget and we're going to be knocking back and forth until we get back on, like you had to go get unhealthy before you became healthy, but maybe you had to get unhealthy so that you would have so much more context for this beautiful next health journey that you've created to help other people get healthy. You had your own personal experience. So all of that to say, I believe we are co-creators with life and we can influence. And if we learn these tools to take more of our power back and do everything we can, by the way, just gratitude journaling, it makes you feel good. So at the very least, like you have a daily practice that is releasing positive biochemistry. But like magic has happened with gratitude. Yes. And the more that we proactively believe that we have the power to co-create, it's hard to heal when you're in a powerless place. So if you feel like it's just all out of your hands and there's no higher power and, you're just at the mercy of your fate and your genes, like it's a pretty disempowered place to be. So you and I have had access to information that we've applied that have changed our lives for the better. So the more that we do that, the more we believe that there is something greater than us. There is a purpose for being here. And the more we align with it, the more vitality we have.
Agreed.
And I love, like, Dr. Jeffrey Thompson is this neuroacoustic wizard. He's a genius. He's like a kind of a mad scientist in the film. Mm-hmm. And his background was chiropractic, but he was also a musician. And he figured out how to hook people up to these sensors and then find the exact frequency, tone, musical note that would drop their body into parasympathetic nervous system. Wow. So it would adjust. It's a specific frequency to you, and then he would record tracks that you could listen to get you in that healing state, which is so cool.
Yeah, really neat.
But he says, there comes a time in life where you approach a fork in the road. Sure. Usually it happens maybe in your late teens, early 20s, but you can choose the path of where societal pressures, parental, like what you should do, and then the path, what your heart wants you to do, what you came here for, what lights you up. Yes. And, most of the time we take that left turn. Right. And that's when, he said, that's when dis-ease begins. Yes. And so then life healing is coming back to like what you were meant here for, what your gifts are, and that alignment, that ease, that alignment with purpose is what brings you vitality because you're not swimming upstream.
Absolutely. And I can tell from my own personal journey, the vitality comes from a place of just, physically, of course, feeling good, but mostly it comes from a place of positivity and doing the gratitude journaling and doing the work on trauma, et cetera. I think that's brings much more vitality than even the physical well-being, which is obviously needed at a baseline, but getting in the right mindset of it brings that vitality as well.
Yeah, it's so powerful. I love the story of Anita Moorjani. If you humor me for one more moment.
Of course.
And this just like I just think her story is kind of like she's the poster child of possibility, and it's all consciousness and mind. It's no physical. Yeah. So Anita Moorjani, fellow Hindu, Hindu woman, but she was raised in Western culture of Hong Kong. So she was exposed to all these kind of modern Western ideas. So when it came time for her to be married and go through the traditional arranged marriage situation, she said, no, I want to marry for love. I'm a Western woman. I'm a modern woman. And so she kind of brought a lot of humiliation to her family. And broke the relationship with her dad, and just a lot of shame. And
Yeah.
so she carried that. She went on to marry with love. There's still her partner. And years later, she lost her best friend to cancer. So she had this like kind of tense relationship with her family, lost her best friend to cancer, and then she developed cancer. And she got lymphoma. Because of her Indian roots, she went back to India, did all the Ayurveda, tried to do it naturally. That wasn't working, so then she did the Western route of chemo and radiation. That didn't work, and she winds up in a hospital bed after some years, and she's like 70 pounds. They can't even tap a vein. She's got lemon-sized tumors from her neck to her abdomen coming out of her skin, and her organs were failing. Like, there's not a human being, doctor, specialist, anybody that would look at this woman thinking that she could recover. Like, she was physically gone. Went into a coma. Doctors told her husband, say your goodbyes. She's gone. During that coma, she left her body, had a near-death experience, went into this other realm, and she had this all-knowing, again, time not linear, kind of in this moment. She was aware of her brother flying in from India, her conversations her husband was having down the hall that she couldn't possibly hear. And then she encountered the essence of her father who had passed over. So she's in this other realm, heaven, what you will. And she just has this telepathic exchange where all this was communicated. There was no judgment. It was pure love. And she understood in that moment that everybody in this 3D kind of human experience is like the separation is an illusion. They're all connected. It's only love. And we're lost in this illusion. And she realized that she got the cancer because she had been every decision she made was from fear. Fear of what she was eating would cause cancer because she lost all the stuff. And so in that moment, her dad was like, go back and live your life without fear, because she got it. And she's like, but this is fantastic. I want to stay here in this beautiful, loving realm. I don't want to go back to that body, And he's like, your purpose is not over. And she just understood that if she went back into her body, she would heal miraculously. So she went back into her body, reanimated it. Everybody was like, whoa, what's happening?
Yeah,
and within 3 weeks, there was no cancer in her body.
What?
Within 5 weeks, she walked out of the hospital. She recounted to doctors things she couldn't have possibly known. Because a lot of people think if you have a near-death experience, you're just like hallucinating in your mind. So it's all medically, there's all this record of this.
It's documented.
She goes around the world now speaking about it. And so all that happened was a shift in her consciousness.
Sure.
So to me, that's what I'm fascinated about, because I don't have the background in medicine. I've talked to enough people. I know that there's flaws in the system. But like, when I hear that story, I just know that like when we tap into the truth of who we really are, these spiritual beings, we have access to that energy all the time. We have access to that intelligence and knowledge. And it is like a loving intelligence, even though there's a lot of shit in our earth school that we've got to deal with, and wars and other things. It's like, I find that so powerful. And when with a shift in perception, we can, move mountains and heal the impossible.
It's so true. With that, I mean, that's such a beautiful story. And I'm so glad you brought up that story, because it is one that kind of resonates with me every time I think about it as well. So have you interviewed her for your podcast?
In the first iteration. So I did it. I started out of COVID, and then I took a year off because I was like needed a break, and then I started up again. So I got to check in with her. Again. Yeah.
Wow. She's still speaking around the world, right, from what I hear.
I think so. She wrote another book, and
incredible.
But anyone listening, if you're dealing with cancer, read her book, Dying to Be Me.
Dying to Be Me.
It's again, she woke up to the truth of who she really is, and healing happened.
I love it. Wow, with so much good stuff here. I think it adds another dimension to the health conversation that I haven't had this conversation yet with anyone. So I really appreciate you coming on the show and bringing this to the conversation. It's been fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's an honor to be here.
What's next for you, Kelly?
So I'm doing the Heal with Kelly podcast to continue to explore all of these spiritual concepts that we talk about. And as well, I just interviewed you. So there's all sorts of doctors and spiritual teachers and just understanding. I just love to seek and share. So that's the Heal with Kelly podcast. And I just stepped into a leadership role. Me and another investor are taking over this company that I invested in right after Heal came out. And originally it started as a marketplace that I knew had to exist because people would watch Heal and they said, okay, well, how do I find my team? How do I find my healers? How do I find the modalities that are going to help me find freedom from this condition? And so it started as a marketplace, but in COVID, it switched, and it's called WellSet now. But we got into an incubator for Blue Cross Blue Shield, and they ended up investing in us, which we were so excited about because our goal is to get more and more of these holistic modalities covered by insurance to give people more access. So WellSet has now become basically the Peloton of mental health to help people with anxiety, burnout, and nervous system regulation. But because of, essentially right now it's an enterprise offering. All of that to say, me and another investor just took over the company. He's got lots of experience building businesses, especially in healthcare. I've got obviously my set of skills over here in holistic health and healing. And what we're doing, we're rebranding it. And what we want to do is create this container, because we know now that you can't heal if you're in stress. So our first goal is to offer people all the tools and guidance and education they need to get out of fight or flight, to regulate your nervous system in the moment. Whether you're in crisis right now and dealing with a diagnosis or a divorce or, a suicidal child, like all of these things that so many of my friends are dealing with right now, or you just want daily tools and rituals to stay healthy and prevent any of these conditions. So we are creating a container. We're calling it Held because we want you to feel held and safe on your journey. And everybody's on a journey right now. And offering just like teachers that I use, teachers that I featured in Heal, just the best of the best to help you get back to shift your state and become calm and connected to yourself again. And then we're also going to create these pathways. So for instance, if you get a cancer diagnosis, which so many people come to me, and I'm sure to your clinics, to find like what are the steps I need to take, because they're aware that like maybe there's more I need to do outside of just conventional treatment.
Or what else is out there, right?
What else is out there, and it's such a scary thing. So again, with Held, we're creating these pathways for cancer, for autoimmune, for addiction, for chronic pain, to give you the steps to empower you to be your own advocate, to become the CEO of your own health, and these tools to release your past trauma, basically go through those radical remission steps of healing. But taking the overwhelm out of it. What doesn't exist in my mind is that place where you can come and just like know you're held and you have all the guidance you need on your healing journey. Because right now it's just so noisy. There's so much out there. And it's just to choose what your next step is overwhelming. And when you're overwhelmed, you're in stress. And when you're in stress, you can't heal. So what we really want to solve for is that to be that place where you can get that mental, emotional, and spiritual support on your journey. And so, so I'm really I'm diving in as an entrepreneur, rebranding, creating that offering, and in parallel, the next film to follow up with Heal that has to do all with emotions and nervous system and trauma to give people that awareness and empowerment for themselves.
Oh, that's fantastic. I really believe that will solve for a missing piece in the whole healthcare kind of algorithm right now is this new platform you're developing called Held. I'm excited to use it with my patients.
I'm excited. So we'll launch it to, our audiences, yours and mine, and everybody who's involved probably like April-ish of 2025. So
can't wait
stay tuned.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a fantastic conversation. I can't wait to have you on again.
Thank you. I love hanging with you. We could talk for days.
I know. Thank you.